It seems like that there was a lot that happened this week, from EA's boss Andrew Wilson possibly being in the running for a Disney CEO position, Xbox announcing a new handheld, and Ubisoft basically restarting development on an upcoming game. But let's not waste any more time. Let's go ahead and get into the news. There's been a new report that states that EA boss Andrew Wilson is reportedly tapped for the Disney top job. Now, at least according to Wall Street Journal, they state that the current EA CEO Andrew Wilson is one of the top dogs to replace the current CEO at Disney, Bob Iger, which he is expected to leave the company sometime in 2026, so don't expect it to happen anytime soon. For people who's unfamiliar with Andrew Wilson, he's been working for EA for a very long time, spanning across 20 years. He's been at the CEO position for at least over 10 years now, and it's come with its own fair share of controversy and criticism surrounding that. There's been a bunch of different smaller studios that's been closed down because of him, projects that no longer exist, him being somewhat responsible for the closure of Visceral Games back in 2017, and he was even responsible for the closure of Ridgeline Games, who was supposed to be making an upcoming Battlefield narrative. I think it was supposed to be part of this upcoming Battlefield game that's coming out, or something else separate entirely. Now, whether or not this is a good thing or bad thing, really ain't gonna know, because people don't like Andrew Wilson as is, and there's been people to say, well, he should leave. We haven't liked him for years. He's also been responsible for the whole loot box and microtransaction controversy that plagued the industry in 2017, and it wasn't just games like Battlefront 2, even games like Need for Speed Payback had that same problem. Now, at least within the recent few years, EA has been putting out quality games. They put out the Dead Space remake, which a lot of people like. There are current games that are in the works that people are looking forward to, including the Black Panther game, Iron Man game, the two recent Need for Speed titles that came out with Unbound and Heat, both of the Star Wars Jedi games, and even as recent as something like Dragon Age The Veilguard. Even though that could be somewhat of a divisive game depending on who you ask, I've been thoroughly enjoying my time with the game. I made a whole video about it. Y'all should go check it out. And even the summer release of College Football 25, which got a lot of praise from a lot of fans and sold a boatload of copies, making EA a lot of money. So at least in the recent few years, it hasn't been all doom and gloom at EA. Now, whether or not he would be a good fit to replace Bob Iger, we will see. Time will tell. But even though a lot of people do want Andrew Wilson's head on a plate, people got to keep in mind that, let's say he does take the job at Disney, then let's say the next CEO that is at EA just makes things objectively worse, and we start seeing things that we thought were once dead reemerge their ugly heads, and we start getting subpar products year after year, and their value as a company starts going down, and God forbid be in the same boat as Ubisoft. Xbox recently announced a handheld that will be in development, and they pretty much released this 30-second advert saying that this is an Xbox, that is an Xbox. At this point, it's a running joke where basically a refrigerator or a coffee mug could be an Xbox. Hell, to some people's eyes, a PS5 could be viewed as an Xbox, considering certain games that may end up coming on the platform. Maybe not day one, but sometime down the line, maybe in the spring. We see it with the Indiana Jones game that's going to be coming out around that same time. Time will tell if we'll see a game like Avowed ever come to PS5. Now, a few days ago, according to Tom Henderson, Ubisoft's Project U is back to the drawing board after 5 years of development. Now, at one point in time, this game was codenamed Pathfinder, and this was announced back in September of 2022, and it was touted as, quote, a revolutionary new kind of session-based cooperative shooter. The premise of Project U is that Earth had been invaded by machines that want to mechanize all life, which I gotta say, considering the times we're in, this is pretty interesting. But this game was touted as a PvE game, but based on a bunch of feedback from different players, it had one Achilles heel weakness: having replayability. Now, earlier this year, back in March, it was announced that development on this game was stopped immediately, with people working on the team moving on to different projects, and even one of the devs on the team going to DICE. Now, instead of outright canceling it, Ubisoft cited Helldivers 2 as a successful PvE game, and granted, that's a big game to try to compare Project U to, and time will tell if this game will end up matching the level of Helldivers 2, considering how many people still play that game. Now, granted, there's one thing that Ubisoft is known for. They typically don't abandon any type of multiplayer live service game. They typically want to update it as much as they can, even if it is very little people playing it. So they just don't want to be one of them people who just pulls the plug on something. They may have a small team work on it and, you know, that just be that. According to Konami, the reason why that they chose to remake Snake Eater is that younger gamers don't know about MGS anymore. Quote reads, "One of the things that really sparked us to do the remake in general is because we realized that a lot of the newer, younger generation of gamers aren't familiar with the Metal Gear series anymore. It was basically our mission, our duty, to kind of continue making sure that the series lives on for future generations. After all, we leave behind much more than just DNA, as Solid Snake would say, but again, who is Solid Snake?" Now, granted, the last big Metal Gear game that came out was the Phantom Pain, and that was one of the first, if not the only Metal Gear game that went fully open world, and I felt like it was just a genius and mad lad of an idea to do. I felt like that game had a great, compelling narrative, and there is some truth to what he's saying, because there are people right now that was born the year that Snake Eater came out, and it makes me feel that much older. And I think that's a big reason why we do see a lot of remakes, because there's a lot of classic games that we grew up playing that today's audience never played, and the only way that they could even go back and play the old games is if they had a PC and they got to do this or that or pull a couple strings here just to make it playable on a PC. And the easier option would be, you know, to play it via backwards compatibility, but not that many titles have backwards compatibility. And the ideal solution would be to have a lot of games from generations ago be updated a tad bit with like a little bit of a better frame rate to take advantage of the newer hardware available. But alas, we don't have that. It's only a select few titles that do have backwards compatibility. It don't matter if it's on Xbox or PlayStation. It would be an ideal thing with games from way back when to still be currently available, playable on console, but that's just not the reality we live in, sadly. The Avowed director explained lack of romance for the upcoming game, citing it as a ton of work. With the quote reading, "It works very well in some games, it's a ton of work. You want to make sure you do it right, and part of that is also you want to make sure that a player who opts not to romance but still wants to have a very deep relationship with those companions gets to have just as thorough and meaningful an experience on a friendship or an ally path as if they went on a romance path. And so we felt that we could best tell our companion stories and our players' relationships without the romance option. With the 4 companions, we wanted them to all have key roles in the story, different party roles, different personalities, and ways that they complement each other and let them tell the story of the Living Lands to the player." Now, keep in mind, Obsidian's last RPG, The Outer Worlds, you really couldn't romance anybody. You really, at best, could have a really deep relationship with the characters you meet along the way. But it was one of them things where I thoroughly enjoyed it for what it was. Now, is it slightly disappointing that you won't be able to romance anybody in Avowed? Sure, but does that mean that it will be any less of a great RPG? The jury is still out on that, so time will tell. But with all the pedigree that Obsidian has historically with RPGs, I think a lot of people are probably still looking forward to this game nonetheless. Now, with that being said, let me know what y'all think about all these stories in the comments below. Till next time, I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace.